Meeting to order. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have all 5 board members present, 3 of us live and 2 of us. Ms. Shumway, you're here, Jen?
I am.
And Ms. Young, are you here also?
I am.
Okay, thank you. So all 5 of us are here. I will entertain a motion to proceed with our organizational meeting of the governing board.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Jack, second by Mrs. Weiser. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Sorry, I'll wait there for the delay. None opposed. Motion passes 5-0. We are now in our annual organizational meeting, and we do not have any newly elected board members, so we will skip item A. Item B is election for president for 2022. We don't need seconds on this. We just need nominations. Are there any nominations for president? I will make a nomination for Roger Jacks. Are there any other nominations for president? Okay, nominations are now closed. All those in favor of Mr. Roger Jacks for our 2022 board president, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We'll congratulate you later, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll now move to item C, which is election of a vice president for 2022. Are there any nominations for vice president?
I have a nomination for Dr. Lucero for vice president.
So nomination for Charles Lucero. Any other nominations? Okay, nominations are now closed. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And item D is to set our meeting calendar for 2022. So first I'll defer to Dr. Dorner. Is the same dates of the month and time good for you and the staff?
Yeah, that works just fine for us.
Okay. Are there any recommendations from the board members? We would like to keep it the same.
That's fine. Does it, do we need to consider March's date? It does fall in spring break, I believe.
Yes, we can do that now.
Is it the first or second week? I don't.
I don't know when spring break is.
Ron knows.
So the
Second week.
board meeting. the
I would
board
move it.
meeting would be-
Yeah, I would
March.
agree with board member Shumway to maybe change that one.
Okay. So
Starts the second week.
the 7th
Yeah.
of March is the first week of spring break,
That's what I have.
and the 14th is the second week. So we can move our March meeting to March 21st, which would be the 3rd week in March.
One second.
Or is that
Yeah.
going to be okay with the?
That's
right?
fine.
I didn't know if it
22nd.
mattered.
Oh,
with
22nd, I'm
financials
sorry.
at work.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we have our regular scheduled board meetings on the 2nd Tuesday of every month, except March, which will be March 21st and all those will be at 4:30
One
PM.
second.
And Mr. Jack seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
March 21st.
Aye.
22nd.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Jen?
March 21st is a Monday.
Oh, March, okay, sorry. I'll amend that to March 22nd. Is that okay with you, Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Okay, so March 22nd, we'll do a revote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn our organizational meeting and reconvene to our regular governing board meeting.
So move.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. So with that, I'll congratulate Mr. Jacks. It's an honor and privilege to give you this. And-
Okay.
Thank you, Roger, for everything that you do for the community and our school district. We appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to item 6, the call to the audience. The board will listen to any comments from the public, but will not respond except for as permitted by Arizona Revised Statutes 38-431.01. The board may refer the item to the administration or request to have it placed on a future agenda. Do we have any calls to the audience? Hearing or seeing none, we'll move on to item number 7, presentation of appreciation to Tim Webb for his $541 donation to the KUSD music program.
It's always so refreshing to have people. I don't know a microphone. It's always refreshing to have individuals from our community recognize our programming. And thanks to the connection of Dr. Dorner, this fine musician has contributed to our district's music program. Mr. Tim Webb is an extraordinary drummer and has created a CD which was sold at the Route 66 Festival at the beginning of November. And all of the proceeds benefited the Kingman Unified School District's music programs. We have monies going to Wallapai for ORF instrumentation repair, middle school instruments and sheet music, and some of our elementary band programming has benefited from the contribution by Mr. Webb. If you haven't heard the CD, I can loan it to you, but I want it back, Mr. Jacks, Dr. Lucero. And I wish to congratulate and thank this fine community member for recognizing the importance of the arts in our children's lives. It's your wife.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webb. Item 8, we have Jody Shinman from the robotics team sponsor a proposal on engineering and robotics building at Kingman High School. Jody.
Congratulations, President Jackson, Vice President Lucero. Thank you for having us come once again and represent Team 60. Just a real brief introduction. We are 25 years this year. Our organization is going strong. Our motto this year is 25 and building careers. The reason for the presentation today, and I've got my crew behind me, is basically we have hit a milestone with our group. I approached Dr. Dorner back in December. We received a $10,000 check as a donation from the Mojave County Superintendent. And this went to our building fund. Our building fund started in 2015. We started this project. We wanted to reach out and actually build an engineering on campus. Kingman High School graciously offered a lot up there on the campus to build this building. We had some funding from Wave JTED, which we lost due to the extent of getting the project off the ground. But we as an organization continued to grow that fund. And with the $10,000 check, we hit a milestone in my book of $50,000 that our group raised towards this engineering building. What our goal is, and if you could go to the next slide, our goal is we want to open the door for the whole community, as it were. And we have done that over the years. We started our group in 1996. I joined in the year 2000, 2001. And I have been a part of the organization and a firm believer in the organization since then. I've seen many students come and go. I've seen many students progress and mature and grow into productive citizens, not only in our own community, but with NASA, with JPL, with SpaceX. It is an ongoing program. The project that I would like to, and our group would like to start again is get this building as an actual, from a dream state to an actuality. Okay. We have gone to many extents over the years. We've done fundraisers. We're continuing to do fundraisers. We are willing to turn that 50,000 over to the school district to start building this building. Next week, we have a meeting with KAMA, the Kingman Area Manufacturers, Kingman Area and Mojave Manufacturers Association, to assist us in garnering more funds and more backing and more support. What we are looking at is support from not only the school district, the school board, but Mojave County as a whole, to support an engineering building on North Campus, Kingman High School campus. We've got the backing of the Principal Isaiah Ward up there and their staff. Dr. Dorner opened the door to this meeting so that we can hopefully get that backing and that support and move the project forward. I have two of my mentors with robotics here tonight. They have connections with the architecture and structural engineering field. Mr. and Mrs. Leggett joined our group back in 2016, 17, 13, many years ago. And if you have any questions about the building and the facility, as the slide shows, we've got representation from the industry, from KAMA, industrial advisors. If you can go to the next slide. And then the building overview, what we are looking at doing is we would like to build a 100 by 60 steel frame structure or a steel building. Working with the industries again, if we can get the building donated, we would just need the concrete and the infrastructure completed. That is our goal next week with KAMA, is to see if we can get a building donated. And then our main cost would be the permits, the infrastructure for the plumbing, the HVAC, fire suppression, etc. But this building would be open to the community as a whole. We would have Lee Williams, White Cliffs, Kingman Academy for their FTC, FLL programs. We would continue to open that up, but we would actually have an actual facility to house all of our equipment right now, which 3/4 of it is in mothballs at Laren Industries. And we would be able to bring that to this facility and have it readily available for any organization within the engineering platform, 3D printers, etc., available so that the whole community as a whole. The United States is proven we are falling behind in STEM. We need to bring our standards back up, and we need to offer our students and our community that. Do you have anything, any questions of the architecture, myself, any of the students?
can you explain where the building is? So it's the rectangle up there on the upper
Okay,
right?
yes, we actually, when I was visiting the campus 2 weeks ago, we found 3 sites. Right now, in the back of the building, if you were to look at the slide, you have the south side bus drop off, and where the small, the children's area, or used to be the childcare facility. There is a back area back there. We have 2 Connex boxes right now. The building first site would be right next to those Connex boxes on the interior of the gate. Preferably, the second site, which is just south of the gate and fencing area, would be the preferable site. We would need to level that area because there is a slope. The third, which is not a preferred, is more towards the football field, which is on the opposite side of the barn in the back there of the campus. So everything would be non-intrusive per se and easily accessible to not only our organization, but to any, if there was another engineering program or program that would could utilize the facility.
How much did you lose from JTID?
We lost, we had a $50,000 grant and they wanted us to match it. We were able to start with ICOR, sorry. ICOR was the first business on board and they're still with us as a sponsor for robotics. They donated $2,000. That went right away into a business account to save for this. And then over the years, we've garnered through grants and through sponsorships up to $50,000. We had a fun run. We plan on doing another fun run for the building. We're not going to stop. You know, our goal is to give these students hopefully that avenue and the school district that opportunity to utilize a building for STEM.
If you get the building donated, how much additional funding would you need to complete it?
Donald, do you?
Remote can hear. A building of this caliber, right now is going for $38 a square foot. That puts this one at about 250,000. We get the building donated, that should knock off, I'm going to guess between 100 and 150,000 off of it.
Oh, that figure is completed. The
Yeah,
$38 a square
That,
foot.
that's the completed shell, not with the classrooms and stuff in it, but the basic shell.
Okay.
Turnkey is what I was quoted, meaning the slabs in, electricals in, all of that.
You're getting there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions by any of the board members? Okay,
No.
thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, have we been able to go over any of these numbers? And
No,
what we
not
may
yet.
Be able to do with it?
I suggested to Ms. Sheneman that making a presentation before the board on the past history and the dream and what they're looking for would be a really good starting point. Then we would sit down with procurement and Mr. Sherman and we were in transition of facilities at the time. We'd have to draw them in. They'd have to do a feasibility study. All those other things will come next.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 9, reports. Start with Superintendent Dr. Dorner.
President Jacks, members of the board. A request was made, which was good timing because I planned on having a report on this anyway. regarding the current state of the pandemic / COVID at KUSD. So you didn't have to rely on hearing every word I said as I speak at a normal speed. I did put a few brief slides together. The first slide answers the question, what have our percentage rates been at KUSD as far as reported positive COVID cases? So Rob, that's the next slide. We have it by week, but instead of putting 18 weeks out on a long graph, I condensed it to the monthly average. So the average of the 4 weeks in August, and you could see the red is student, the blue is employee percentage rates reported to KUSD and absent for that month. August was a 0.59%. That's less than 1%, not 59%. So notice the 0.59 and the 0.80. When we get to September, you can see the employee rate did dip above the 1%, 1.39, and so on through the semester. Other than that little spike in September, the fall semester stayed fairly average across each month. Yes, I do recall conversations we had last year. Not everybody reports being ill, specifically with the Omicron and the latest versions, that for most people that are reporting to us have more typical cold symptoms. This may not represent all positive cases. This does represent absences that are reported to us as COVID. The adults probably more accurate because we do offer, obviously, when you're out with symptoms of COVID or you're being tested for COVID, we cover your daily rate of pay. So it would behoove someone to let us know when they're symptomatic or they're out testing, because then they're not drawing from personal banks of time. You will see that we only have 2 weeks in January. So the first week, I will tell you, was fairly low. The first Monday back, we did have some absences, people who did not return from holiday. This Monday behind me, a week later, I would call it a week after New Year's Eve, we are seeing, I think, the effects of New Year's Eve get-togethers. The adult or the employee rate has increased to 2.6% this week, and the student percent of reported cases has increased to 1%. So I would call that the surge. It is low, if you notice to the side, much lower than the numbers that are being reported in Mojave County. I looked at Mojave County site today. There's a 13% countywide rate. So we are running lower than what they're seeing. The next question is, how are we covering classes and what's it looking like for teachers and schools? We've been studying absences last fall with Meet and Confer because we're always seeking to increase our sub pool. Obviously, we never want the stress of teachers having to cover for teachers, and we were seeing that fairly often. To give you an example of that August through December absence data for teachers, there were approximately, within a handful, 2,169 absences that needed to be filled. Now, before you say, oh, I did, in Meet and Converts, I said, oh my gosh, we really have an absence problem. You have to consider that there are 418 certified employees, and we'll say approximately 77 days, 72 contact days plus some additional days before school. So if you multiply that out, there are 32,000 opportunities for certified employees to be at work. So then you see that 2,169 of them needed substitutes, and these would be even the unfilled positions. So we have around 10 unfilled positions. They count all 77 days, right? So if you have 10 of those and 77 days apiece, that kind of brings it down. When I subtract those from the calculation, we're running around a 5% absence rate. So that's basically that first bullet point with a little bit of extra information. We'd been running, we were a little lower in November than December, an 80 to an 88% fill rate, which is obviously we want a 100% fill rate. But 80 to 80% is what we were averaging with our current substitute pool at that time. In some cases, our classified subs filled in and were compensated that $2 hour per more if they took our substitute certification class, which I think about 13 to 15 have done. So they would cover and then be paid more per hour. In some cases, classroom assistants covered if it was a special education room and there were still 3 to 4. One teacher might go back and forth between 2 rooms, and one of the paraprofessionals that's accustomed to working with those kids would remain in that room. In some cases, in many cases in secondary, when you have high school unfilled positions, the admin assistants will seek teachers on their prep. So if I have a 4th hour prep, I might volunteer to cover your class, Beth, on 4th hour if you're not there. And then I receive a payout for that one missed prep. That happens at secondary very regularly. In some cases, admin and office personnel fill in voluntarily. And then in rare instances, classes are combined. That is a last resort, and I don't think it's happened much, if at all. When we jump over at our substitute teaching staff, which is what we're working on always, we are currently with 72 substitutes. That is a little bit down from 77 right when the holidays shifted back to second semester, but because 5 resigned to take full-time jobs. We do have 7 on hiatus, which means they might be on FML for personal reasons, or maybe they had an illness for a week or 2 and they didn't want to sub. That's the 7 on hiatus. 11 of those 72 we do use for long-term assignments, the ones I mentioned previously. 10 of the 72 are assigned to schools. I've mentioned in the past that one of our strategies to reduce at least some stress at the school is to have a sub full-time assigned. So you don't have to call for them. They just come to work every day there. Through our ESSER funds, we are doubling that to 2. So we'll increase that, which is a part of our hiring drive also. Then that leaves 51 available to pick up daily openings that are above that one. The one assigned sub takes the first opening. And then there are 51 left to pick up other unfilled spots. HR has 7 interviews this week. We've had a sudden interest by retired community members and others interested in substitute teaching. So that's pretty good. 7 in a week. She'll interview them and process them as this week goes on. So that 51 could become 58 by next week. And we continue to market and hire in an ongoing manner. So yes, we are always battling and challenged with classes and filling them and subs, but it is a primary focus in HR and in Meet and Confer at this time. Do you have any questions about those 2 slides before I move on? I thought I would kind of combine a little bit of SSE updates with cleaning routines, because obviously we needed to speak with SSC now that the transition has been made about continuing our cleaning routines and in some cases improving upon them, because I know there have been reports that it hadn't been happening consistently across all campuses. Erin and I have a standing meeting with SSC once a week on Tuesday and more often as needed. And we did discuss earlier today and once last week the importance of the cleaning routines and aligning their standard operating procedures with our Return to Learn guide or Keeping Schools Open guide. So they're reviewing a copy of this. They're sharing their standard routines with us. For example, all of the COVID custodians were included in that transition package. So they were all absorbed and either left at the schools or they were higher for any gaps that we had at the time when the transition was made. All of their cleaning supply, we no longer have COVID cleaning supplies versus traditional cleaning supplies. We will, through attrition of the supplies of them being used, they will all be replaced with hospital grade materials that SSC uses. That is, obviously if it's hospital grade, it works well with COVID. And then that will become the standard routine for not only the COVID custodians that were absorbed, but the other custodians. And we call them day porters now. So when I update the guide and share it with you, you'll see the term day porter. So they're continuing, as you see on the screen, to focus on classroom cleaning. Evening porters are going to disinfect everything, and I won't read every slide. You can see it, but they're going to continue to mop and vacuum and wipe handles and use the hospital grade disinfectants. I've heard we've kind of got a little inconsistent across some campuses with hand sanitizers in classrooms, so we'll work with them to make sure those are always filled and available so that we're sanitizing in and out, especially now with the numbers being a little up. Continue to work on collaborating with elective course teachers and playground access so that everything remains sanitized. So I'm really happy with SSC's level of attention and willingness to really make this a primary focus and to return us to a better level than we kind of been seeing over the past few months. The other thing that we do have, obviously, I never thought 2 years ago I'd be sitting here giving yet another COVID and pandemic report. The stress is palpable across the nation, the community, our school district, and in individual schools and classrooms. There's no doubt about that. You have people who are very nervous about it and really mindful and always encouraging all of us to do, a better job. So we are launching this week a recommitment campaign, if you will, to get that return to learn or the stay open guide reread and revisited. We'll challenge principals and staffs to review that, and then to look at the things we're doing as a district, which is the next slide. Making sure that those common areas are being cleaned regularly. Now is not the time to be laxed on that. Making sure personal protective equipment is available and encouraged. Plexiglass shields will remain up. Continue training via the posters and with our classrooms. Encouraging layouts and seating arrangements recommended for social distancing when possible. And no, we do not have the space for 6 feet in every classroom, not even close. But to avoid all the children in a circle on the floor with their heads together, maybe staying in seats, and if you're getting together, encouraging mask use. The bipolar ionization is all in. I already mentioned the COVID custodians being rolled into the SSC routines. Working with administrators, I sent an email out, KUSD all last week. Everyone should have seen that. Gave some evidence that we are working to keep classroom sizes down. Thank you to the board for reducing it by 2 on at every grade span. High school went from 34 to 32, middle school to 30, elementary to 27 and 25. And even with those new ratios, our high schools are averaging 26. Our middle schools are 24 to 25. Our elementaries are 25. So we're even staying below those averages as often as possible. ESSER has been a considerable help for that. And then obviously the paying employees who are symptomatic, I talked about earlier, is not only because we care about our employees and we don't want to interrupt their pay, but it also, if your pay matters and you need to pay your bills, if you had to choose to stay home, right, for symptoms or go to work to get paid, you might choose to go to work if you really have to pay your bills. So this would alleviate, hopefully, that pressure. And then again, because we do encourage people to stay home, that attributes to those absences. They're not all COVID absences. They are teachers and staff that either need a mental health day break or they're being cautious and not wanting to be at work before they know they may be ill. And finally, encouraging employees to protect themselves by self-monitoring and following health practices within the school day, the work day, or without. As far as just wrapping up the SSC piece, You can you can get a pretty good idea in your board packet, the people who are on the list to leave employment of KUSD would basically represent those who transitioned with the company. We had a higher rate of transition than some people would have predicted. We did have all but one of our district team transition. We really appreciate those employees for giving this a try and working with us and collaborating to make this a positive transition. Thank you.
Any questions by any of the board members?
We're prepared if this surge, I mean, what I've read or understand is that Omicron has not hit Kingman. I mean, I know Delta we're still working on, but they hadn't had enough reported yet from Omicron and expecting a surge from that as well.
That's why we are looking at our Keeping Schools Open guide. We're monitoring it daily. I mentioned briefly in my when I shared the slides that we are going to post a letter to the parents and the community by the end of this week on our current state. And everybody does, board member Weiser, always need to be mindful that we monitor our staff wellness, our percentage numbers, and I will let the board know it immediately if there are pockets or pieces or places where we need to either have a partial temporary closure or do some distance transitioning. We're always hanging on to that need for a conversation.
And President Jack, I'm very concerned that we need to be looking at mask mandate again for the school district. I mean, because that would be the first preventative step instead of closing down school.
Okay, so noted. I think KUSD staff is really doing a great job on meeting the challenge of COVID, and congratulate you on what you've done so far. It's tough.
Roger,
Yes.
I have something to say as well as a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gretchen. It was my request that you were referring to get that information. I do appreciate that. I haven't heard a lot from teachers about any suggestions what we could do besides masking up. Everyone feels that I've spoken to that we're doing what we can with what we have. So that is different, I would say, than a year ago, which is speaks to what it is that our leadership is doing. So I appreciate you and your leadership team for that. My question is, at what point would we get to a need to make a change? You're seeing quite a huge drastic jump in the numbers. What would be the indication that you need to bring it to the board for? You said closures. I really hope we would try to prevent that by using a mask mandate, because I really don't want to see those doors close again. So we have to, as a school district, need to do anything we can to keep that from happening, in my opinion. So what would be the numbers that would trigger something for you that we need to do something as a board?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. When I use the term closure, I do not mean close KUSD like we've done before. So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify that before the rumors run rampant. What I should be more specific about the term closure, since we do all have a little PTSD with that. There would be an example of a special education classroom where There's a small number of kiddos and multiple adults who are in very close proximity where like masks wouldn't even work. And there is really no avoiding the germs. And if there was an outbreak in that classroom, we might close that classroom for that 5 days and then service those students who are not positive in a different way. Those kinds of conversations. Or if I think back to Serbat Thanksgiving week of 2020, fall of 2020, I think it was Serbat Thanksgiving week, they had a surge where they had enough people out that we couldn't adequately staff the classroom. And I think it was a 1 or a 2 day distant learning for that brief amount of time for that group of kiddos. So those conversations, but it would come to the board. I know there was a board decision made probably the summer of 20, maybe the fall of 20, where if there was an emergency situation, I could make those kinds of calls. But if it wasn't, I would get the board together and we would have that group conversation. So thank you for that question. The second piece, is there a number? I don't have that. No, I do not have an answer to that today any more than I had it many other times I was asked during the pandemic. Because I would like to say, you know, if we had I'd have to do the math, so I'm really speaking off the cuff, but if we looked at those numbers, the 418 certified staff, and then the other essential staff that it takes to run a school, and X% of them were out, we couldn't open the school, I'd have to get with principals and calculate numbers. So I could put some of those scenarios together for you, Board Member Shumway, and get them out this week.
Thank you.
Yes.
If we were to go for a mask mandate, I think that puts the onus on the district to provide the masks, and securing $300,000 worth of masks again, as we did at the beginning of the pandemic, could prove to be incredibly difficult on a quick turnaround, and also potentially not the best use of funds. If you're reading, cloth masks aren't holding up currently. So these higher grade of masks are what our people are recommending. So you would be looking at trying to secure a higher level of a mask for a community, staff and students, not so into the mask thing at all. So I would just ask that you really consider the financial impacts of masks as you move forward, and also the ability to get them in our hands.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, Mr. Sermon. Any other comments?
No, other than I'm sorry we're still having this conversation, but I'm glad we're all here to still have it.
Well, we need to. All right, thanks, Dr. Dorner. Moving on to board reports. Do we have any board members with board reports? No. Okay. I have one. For a number of years, Ms. Shumway was the Mojave County director for ASBA. And I guess she decided to share that wealth around a little bit. And oh, no, Shumway, I'm sorry, Ms. Weiser. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know how that my mouth does that. Ms. Weiser was the chairman of, or was a board of director for ASBA for a number of years, and decided to spread that wealth around a little bit. And I agreed to go ahead and do it this year. And so last Friday and Saturday and Sunday, I went to an ASBA board of directors retreat that was paid for by ASBA, and got a little more familiar with ASBA's vision, mission, core beliefs, and strategic goals, and learned a little bit about the three organizations that make up ASBA, ASBA being the parent organization, and then ASBATE for insurance, and Friends of ASBA for advocacy. We did a lot of team building. One of the things that I enjoyed the most was towards the end of the session, where it took an in-depth look at ASBA the strengths of the organization. They've been around for 70 years with an experienced staff. The challenges that they're facing this year with a lot more competition in Arizona for the same types of services that they provide. Also, some threats out there facing the organization, some legislative bills directed at service providers and potential revenue losses. So the organization does have a lot of opportunities to meet these challenges and threats and rise above them. So it's a good 3 days. I'm glad I did it. Moves us on to item 10, approval of routine order of business. Documentation concerning the matters on the consent agenda may be reviewed at the Kingman Unified School District office. Any board member may request an item to be pulled off the agenda for further discussion. Do I have a motion for approval of the routine orders of business?
So moved.
I'll second.
Have a motion by Ms. Young and a second by Ms. Weiser. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Moves us to item 11, which is approval of donations. Have a motion for approval of donations.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, have a motion. Ms. Weiser looking for a second.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Young. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12, possible motion to move into an executive session per Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.03 regarding the personnel matters of David Nichols and Robert Fennell. Is there a need to move into an executive session by the board? Anyone wishing to move into an executive session? Okay. So we'll stay in our normal session. That takes care of item 13. That moves us to item 14. Possible action on recommendations to terminate the employment of David Nichols for reasons stated in the confidential memo to the governing board to impose liquidated damages and report the unprofessional act to the Arizona Department of Education. Do I have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion that KUSD number 20 terminate the employment of David Nichols effective January 11th, 2022 for breach of contract, and also recommend that staff be authorized to impose liquidated damages in the amount of $2,500 and to report the unprofessional act of Mr. Nichols to the Arizona Department of Education.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to Dr. Sarah, second by Ms. Weiser. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Item 15, possible action on recommendation to terminate the employment of Robert Fennell for reasons stated in the confidential memo to the governing board. Do I have a motion for item 15?
Yes, I'll make a motion that Mr. Fennell be dismissed from employment and also to authorize the termination of Mr. Fennell effective January 11th, 2022, which is today.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do a second by Ms. Weiser, a motion by Dr. Lucero. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Moves us to item 16, to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Motion by Ms. Weiser. Do I have a second? I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are.